Hi, this is Keith Williams. Welcome to 5-Watt World. We're interested in helping you get the most music from the least gear. In Ibanez, The Untold Story, Steve Vai says, "I never imagined I'd be a guitar endorser. I didn't even start out to be a guitar player. Since I'm from Long Island, I played accordion." It was years before Vai embraced the guitar player level of cool that led him down the path to guitar stardom and his work with Ibanez to design one of the most recognizable guitars ever produced, the Ibanez JEM, and the guitar that led to the RG. If you're curious to know how that came about, stay put, because this is the 5-Watt World, short history of the Ibanez JEM and RG guitars. If you enjoy our videos, take a minute to subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified when we put out new videos. And if you've already subscribed, swing by the store to grab a t-shirt or a hoodie to support what we're doing here. There's a link in the description. Going all the way back to the beginning, around 1900, a bookstore, Hoshino Shoten, opened in Nagoya, Japan. By 1908, they were selling sheet music and instruments as well. In 1929, classical guitar master Andreas Segovia toured Japan and in his wake left a country clamoring for classical guitars. To meet the demand, Hoshino began importing guitars from a builder in Spain named Salvador Ibanez. By the late 30s, they took over building the guitars themselves in Japan, and soon they shortened the brand name to simply Ibanez. And that's how a guitar company, Hoshino Gakuten, in Japan ended up with the Spanish brand name Ibanez. In 1959, they set up a factory to begin building electric guitars, while also sourcing them from other factories around Japan. They built guitars for many different companies, adding the brand names to the headstock. They built many that were branded as Ibanez as well. In the early 60s, a music retail shop near Philadelphia entered into an arrangement with Hoshino to build acoustic guitars for them under the name Elger, and this was the first chance Hoshino had to come into the US market. Interestingly, right at the time of the exploding demand in the 60s, Hoshino decided to stop producing guitars at their Tama factory, and they began having other companies manufacture their electric guitars, primarily Fujigen Gaki and Tisco Toyoshina. Hoshino/Ibanez would never again have its own guitar factory, and they technically became a guitar trading company, one that buys and sells products, but would no longer manufacture them. When I learned this, I was shocked. This was one of the largest guitar companies in the world, and they don't even have their own factory. But as I thought about the beginnings of other big instrument companies, I remembered how common it was to have a manufacturing arm separate from the marketing and sales division. This was true about Fender until they were sold to CBS. It was also similar to the relationship between Gibson's parent company, Chicago Musical Instruments, and the factory in Kalamazoo. In both cases, the marketing folks had much to say about what would be built, but the guitars themselves were built elsewhere. The interesting thing about this Ibanez story is that this happened in a much more recent time, in the mid-1960s. Fujigen had grown quickly, and in 1965 they built a new factory in Matsumoto, about 100 miles north of Hoshino's headquarters in Nagoya. This area had a long history of fine furniture and instrument building. Fujigen quickly became Hoshino's primary partner in developing Ibanez guitars. It was during this time that Ibanez was most involved in making copies of Gibson and Fender guitars, something that would last through what is referred to as the copy era and the lawsuit era of the 60s and 70s. The instruments were appealing because they were often half the price of the original guitars they were copying. They built various Les Paul, ES, Stratocaster, Flying V, Explorer, and Firebird style guitars, all at prices to reach players looking to get started with a guitar that looked like the ones played by their heroes, though sometimes with some compromise like a bolt-on neck in place of a set neck on a single cut. All this copying did not go unnoticed, and in 1975 Gibson filed a trademark application for their headstock design, something they'd never bothered to do even though they'd used it since 1907. Once this was granted, they brought suit against Ibanez, contacting Hoshino of the action. Not interested in a fight in court, Hoshino took a long look at their business. They knew that they'd likely have similar problems with other brands that they were copying. But along with copies, Hoshino had slowly begun adding its own guitar designs since 1973. This new emphasis on their own designs led to the Artist Series guitars, and in 1975 they also issued the Flash, which they later renamed as the Iceman. Paul Stanley of Kiss began playing the Iceman guitars on stage in front of thousands of fans, and this helped broaden awareness of Ibanez as a quality brand. And this was the start of a period when Ibanez would begin working with many different artists to increase the brand recognition. Steve Miller, George Benson, and Bob Weir were all seen playing Ibanez models. Just as the American market started to recognize the quality of Ibanez, Fender and Gibson also began to take note of the quality coming out of Japan. Fender hired Dan Smith and other managers away from instrument giant Yamaha. In the years to come, Fender would even turn to Fujigen to build some guitars for them under Smith's leadership. At the same time, other new U.S. brands were springing up. Hamer, Charvel, BC Rich, and Kramer among them. Kramer was fueled by Eddie Van Halen, flying high at the time. The mid-'80s became the time of hair metal, and the market was full of superstrats. But the end of the decade also saw Ibanez still wrestling with their brand identity. They started looking around for an artist to represent the brand going into the 90s. They'd already worked with an impressive list of artists: session ace Lee Ritenour, jazz legend Joe Pass, Steve Lukather, and Alan Holsworth. All great players, but none the rock star headliner they were looking for. So in '86, Joe Hoshino called a meeting at the distribution center outside of Philly to wrestle this out once and for all. He told them that they needed an Ibanez equivalent of Eddie Van Halen, someone that could do for them what Eddie had done for Kramer. Future Hoshino U.S. President Bill Ream recalls that everyone at the meeting looked at each other and said, more or less at the same time, "It has to be Steve Vai." Hoshino was moved by the consensus and told the team to make it happen. Vai had come onto the scene in a big way by joining Frank Zappa's touring band in 1980 at just 20 years old. In '84, he replaced Yngwie Malmsteen in Alcatraz and had released his first solo album. By the end of '85, he joined ex-Van Halen vocalist David Lee Roth's new supergroup. Vai had watched Zappa use whatever gear he wanted and then work with the guitar companies to make what he needed to make his music. Vai had started with a Strat and then in Alcatraz had moved to using a humbucker-equipped Charvel. He liked the new locking vibrato, but he'd had his tech remove wood underneath the back of the bridge so it gave it more range for bending up. Subsequently, Vai was well equipped with ideas by the time Ibanez approached him. He remembers sending his preferred specs to many companies, Yamaha and Kramer among them, but the guitars that most of the companies sent back had very little in common with what he'd asked for. Usually, just a standard model with a few tweaks. Through a series of connections, Ibanez was able to contact Steve's mom on Long Island and arrange to have a guitar put under the tree at his parents' house for Christmas in 1986. This got his attention. They began negotiations that eventually led to Vai shipping them guitars with features he liked, with notes on each one. Working with those notes, Mace Bailey at Ibanez made the prototypes. Vai spec'd the green fluorescent finish to which were added pink DiMarzio pickups and contrasting controls, and the signature monkey grip handle slot, an idea that had come from one of Vai's custom guitars. But Vai remembers, "Ibanez took just 3 weeks and gave me a guitar that was exactly what I wanted. In fact, it was better than what I wanted." When presented with the 2 prototypes at his home, Vai immediately pulled out a set of tools and began taking the guitars apart to see how they were built. As the reps from Ibanez looked on with bewilderment, he had to explain that he, quote, "did this with all his guitars," end quote. He then reassembled them and gave him the stamp of approval, with only a few mainly cosmetic tweaks to go away to fix. Now the rush was on to have Fujigen build the guitars in time for the summer NAMM show. Members of the U.S. design team flew from the U.S. to Japan to help. This was their first usage of basswood bodies, and they spent a lot of time selecting the wood. All under a veil of tremendous secrecy within Hoshino and at the Fujigen factory, but in the end the guitars were finished in time. Ibanez put together their stand at NAMM and placed an ominous black shroud over the display at the center, posting the biggest security guard they could find to watch over it day and night. On the second day of the show, at noontime, a crowd of several hundred industry types gathered for the unveiling, including the reps from other guitar makers. When they dropped the shroud, there was a huge poster of Vai playing the JEM, and Vai leapt onto the stage holding the guitar high over his head. The room exploded in applause. The guys from Ibanez might have been paying close attention to the reaction from the guys from Kramer. Just maybe. The JEM was unique with many new features, and it was an entirely new design. It came in 3 striking fluorescent colors with contrasting pickups and controls. The basswood body was an extended double cutaway shape, but with squared sides and pointy horns, and of course, there was the now famous monkey grip handle hole. The pickups were in a humbucker single humbucker configuration, probably a first for a production instrument. It had a unique 5-way circuit from DiMarzio that gave you the dual single coil in-between sounds in positions 2 and 4, like on a Strat. The maple neck was similar to their Ultra neck, but with a little more heft and had a cutaway heel. 25.5-inch scale, a full 24 frets, and the fingerboard was scalloped, something he'd borrowed from Malmsteen, from the 21st fret upward. Under the back of the tremolo were cutouts for each string to move without hindrance, a feature that the Ibanez team had taken to calling the lion claw. The guitar was named the JEM by Vi to honor a childhood friend that had gone into guitar making and had named his company JEM. In hindsight, what was a nod to help out a friend might actually have been a little confusing, but that was the idea, and that's how it got the name. The first batch of JEM 777 LG guitars were shipped in July of '87. The limited edition Loch Ness Green listed for $1,590, while the Desert Sun Yellow and Shocking Pink were $1,299. For context, in '87, a Gibson Les Paul Standard listed for just over $1,000, and an American Standard Strat was just $650. No wonder Ibanez was nervous about selling the guitars. They needn't have been. All the initial 777 limited edition models were sold within a month of their release. Vi had met the guys from Hoshino at a warehouse, and where all 777 cases of the limited edition were laid out waiting for Vi to sign each guitar personally. When the first royalty check came, Vi called Ibanez to say that there must have been a mistake, that maybe there were too many zeros. He was told that it was correct and that all the guitars had sold. According to a Hoshino rep, that might have been the first time on the project that the normally talkative Vi was left speechless. Andy Brower at Guitar Player magazine gave the guitar a rave review, calling it, quote, a real alternative to purchasing a custom-made guitar. The overall feel of the JEM series is excellent. At the same summer NAMM show, Ibanez released the RG 550, basically a JEM-shaped guitar without the wild custom aesthetics and monkey grip. They had the slim-horned square-edge body, single hum pickup layout, and a 24-fret neck. It also had a new neck joint, a variation on the one the JEM had that gave easy access to the topmost frets. And the neck was the new and very thin Wizard neck, just 17 millimeters deep at the nut, so thin that a new type of truss rod had needed to be designed to support the neck. The JEM and RG guitars launched that year are still going strong. The RG sold in the thousands that first year, and according to Hoshino, they still do today. They helped create a new foundation for Ibanez. It can easily be argued that the JEM and RG put Ibanez on the map as an innovator in electric guitar design, a follower, a copier. No longer. The RG guitars were immediately embraced by players appreciating the fast neck and solid tremolo bridge. Paul Gilbert in Mr. Big, Dave Navarro in Jane's Addiction, Wes Borland in Limp Bizkit, and John Petrucci in Dream Theater all played RGs. The JEM, of course, has had many versions over the years, including a 20th anniversary edition in 2007 with a clear acrylic body and internal LED lights. The RG has continued to spawn additional versions over the years as well, and all can clearly trace their roots back to those first guitars from '87. There are entire websites dedicated to the JEM, and some collectors have made it a mission to have one of every version that's been released. The 1992 catalog introduced Vi's Universe 7-string guitar. Vi's 1990 instrumental album Passion and Warfare had been the most successful guitar-led record since Jeff Beck's Blow by Blow. The tune Blue Powder cast a long shadow on modern guitar music. Vi is seen holding the 7-string Universe guitar on the cover. Though originally issued in 1990 in white, black, and swirl finish, the 7-string wouldn't really catch on until a decade later with the advent of nu metal. And lest you think that the history of the RG is purely owned by the Shredders, I'll offer the 1994 RG-style guitar that Ibanez built for Andy Timmons as evidence to the contrary. Andy had started his career in the band Danger Danger, but had gone on to make solo albums that established him as a player's player. Ibanez didn't love the band, but they did like Andy's playing, and they began to work with him on a guitar. Though it has the RG family's pointy body shape, the AT100 has many more traditional features. Andy's prototype AT100 is still his number one guitar, having been refretted 6 times since he took possession of it in February of 1994. The resulting AT100 production signature guitar was an exact replica of the prototype they'd built for Andy. They made a small run of them in 1999, maybe 175 guitars, but later reissued it around 2010. Looking at the design, Timmons' love for classic guitars is apparent in the two-tone burst finish, one-piece 25.5-inch unfinished maple neck, and a more traditional Goto tremolo than the locking trem we're used to seeing on an RG-style guitar. It has his DiMarzio signature AT1 bridge humbucker and 2 single-coil-style DiMarzio cruiser pickups. It shares the original Vi spec switching for the bridge and middle that splits the bridge pickup. It has Dunlop 6105 frets, a Goto VS VG tremolo, and Goto non-locking tuners. In 2013, they came out with a more affordable Indonesian-built AT10P. It has the same pickups as the AT100, but with more affordable hardware and construction to be available to a wider range of players. But back in the late 90s, nu metal found a home for 7-string guitars, and the band Korn was an early user of Ibanez guitars that helped revive the brand's 7-string guitar line, which had sold poorly since their introduction in 1990. Ibanez responded with new 7-string RG guitars in 1998. The Korn K7 model was added in 2001, and by 2012 there would be 13 various 7-string models in the Ibanez catalog. With 7 strings firmly established in the line, they released their first 8-string guitar, the RG 2228, in 2007, with a necessarily wide neck, custom hardware, and a 27-inch scale. 8-string guitars at Ibanez had started in 2003 with building custom 8-string guitars for Fredrik Torendal and Martin Hagstrom from the Swedish metal band Meshuggah. A Meshuggah signature 8-string was added to the line in 2012. Among the current crop of Ibanez signature guitars, for Jake Bowen, J.B. Brubaker, Paul Gilbert, Luke Hoskin, Monkey, and Steve Vai, they can all trace their origins to the JEM and RG series guitars. The JEM still has 5 different models plus a 7-string model, plus the new Pia guitar that is an evolution of the JEM. In the RG line, there are no fewer than 68 different models, ranging from the Made in Japan Prestige series to the Chinese-built Geo entry-level line. The JEM and RG guitars have now been on the market for over 35 years and are likely the guitar you think of when someone says Ibanez. I need to thank Tony Bacon for his excellent The Ibanez Electric Guitar Book. The link for the book's in the description. Also, the guys at Hoshino were very supportive and overnighted me a copy of their book Ibanez, The Untold Story by Paul Specht, Micheal Wright, and Jim Donahue. It's an amazing collection of rare photos and stories for the Ibanez lover. I need to thank Jason Shadrick and John Bollinger at Premier Guitar Magazine for the clip of the Andy Timmons Rig Rundown. I've lost track of the number of times I've watched that now. And once again, I need to thank Tom Quayle and the folks at Dawson's Music in the UK for the great music on the intro and outro of the video. Tom's an extraordinary guitarist, and though he's playing an RG here, he has his own beautiful Ibanez signature model guitar. If you're not already tracking Tom's playing, I highly recommend him to you. As always, I'm indebted to Perry McManus for his commitment to both the minutiae of guitar histories and to the improvement of my use of the English language in a script. If you have your own RG and or JEM story to share, please put it in the comments for everybody to enjoy. If you enjoyed this short history of the Ibanez RG and JEM series guitars, hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that too. Remember to click the bell icon to be notified when we put out a new video. And if you want to support these videos even more, stop by the store and grab a t-shirt or a hoodie. The link's at the top of the description. Thanks for watching. Until next time, thanks for being a part of the 5 Watt world.